Welcome to the 2021 Community Economic Development Funding Opportunity Announcement Pre-Application Presentation. This presentation provides prospective applicants of the Community Economic Development Program with details about the 2021 CED grant competition. Please note that we will be referring to the Community Economic Development Program as the CED program throughout this webinar. The 2021 CED Funding Opportunity Announcement, or FOA, is now available on the Administration for Children and Families Grants webpage. The Administration for Children and Families is also referred to as ACF in this presentation. The Office of Community Services, also known as OCS, wants to bring to your attention some important details about the 2021 CED grant competition. Each of these details, which are discussed in Section 4, Application and Submission Information, beginning on page 21 of the FOA, will also be discussed in more detail in this presentation. ACF requires applications to be electronically submitted via www.grants.gov. The deadline for electronic application submission is 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on July 12, 2021. The deadline for receipt of paper applications is 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on this date. Keep in mind, to submit a paper application, you must obtain a waiver in advance. Each applicant may only upload 2 electronic files, one for project description and another for the appendices. All project application materials must be included in these 2 files. Additional files that are loaded into grants.gov as part of the project description or appendices, such as resumes, business plan site control, will be removed from the competitive review and not reviewed by the panel. The exceptions to this are the standard forms and OMB approved forms, which will not be counted as additional files. Carefully note the file naming conventions required by www.grants.gov. Limit file names to 50 characters, which includes characters and spaces. Adobe Acrobat is compatible for use with grants.gov. However, we recommend using the grants.gov compatible version of Adobe Reader software. Read the troubleshooting page on grants.gov for more information. The Office of Community Services, also known as OCS, is excited to kick off the 2021 CED grant competition. The funding opportunity announcement is available on the ACF Grants webpage, the URL for which is listed on this slide. To start off today's presentation, we will talk a bit about the CED program. The CED program is described in Section 1, Program Description of the FOA, which begins on page 2. The purpose of the program is to create business development and employment opportunities in an effort to help low-income individuals achieve economic self-sufficiency. The CED program aims to contribute to community revitalization by providing grants to community development corporations, also known as CDCs, to support business startups or business expansions that result in the creation of full-time, permanent jobs for individuals with low incomes within low-income service areas. CED projects are expected to further the Department of Health and Human Services' goals of strengthening families and promoting self-sufficiency. On page 18 in Section 3, Eligibility Information, the FOA notes that in order to receive a grant award, applicants must be a private, nonprofit community development corporation, or CDC. The premise of the program is that nonprofit CDCs know their community and are poised to efficiently and effectively create new community economic development projects there. To be a qualified CDC, an applicant must meet and demonstrate all 3 of the following conditions. First, the applicant must be a private, nonprofit CDC with 501c3. Second, the applicant must have articles of incorporation or bylaws demonstrating that the CDC has a principal purpose for the planning, developing, or managing of low-income housing or community economic development activities. And finally, the applicant's board of directors must have representation from each of the following: community residents, business leaders, and civic leaders. Community or faith-based organizations that meet these requirements are also eligible to apply. The same statute applies to organizations regardless of whether they are faith-based. CED funds may be used for a wide variety of business startup or business expansion activities, as long as the expenditures result in the creation of positions that can be filled by individuals with low income. The support for a new or expanded business can be accomplished through the CDC using grant funds to become an equity partner or by providing loans. An equity investment may be either in a subsidiary for-profit corporation of the applicant or an unaffiliated business. If CED funding is used for lending, the CDC must ensure the business is viable. Loans must be at or below market rate. Repayment of all loans funded with CED funds must begin during the course of the funded project period, and balloon payments are not allowed. Please note that funding cannot be gifted or given as grants to another organization or business. More details on eligible uses of funding can be found in the FOA in Section 1, Program Description, which begins on page 2. CED funds may be used for purchase of land, completing construction, or renovation of a property as long as these activities contribute to the creation of new permanent full-time jobs. Properties that are constructed or renovated can use funding toward both hard or soft costs of the related development to the real property. Hard costs include capital costs related to the acquisition, construction, and/or alteration and renovation of real property, exclusive of related soft costs. Soft costs include appraisals, environmental studies, and architectural and engineering services. Again, more detail on eligible uses of funding can be found in the FOA in Section 1, Program Description, which begins on page 2. CED funds may not be used for reimbursement of pre-award costs, such as paying an individual or company to write an application. Additionally, CED funds cannot be used for the following: to provide subawards or pass-throughs, to capitalize loan loss reserve funds, to fund loans with balloon payments, to fund loans where repayment does not begin during the funded project period, to create or expand microenterprise business training and technical assistance centers, to fund projects designed to primarily support training and technical assistance centers. Keep in mind, limited job training and job placement activities can be supported if they are provided specifically for the new positions created. For example, funds can be used to train a cashier for a specific position that has been created, but cannot be used to operate a general training and placement program. Finally, ineligible activities include projects that do not create new jobs that did not exist prior to the proposed CED project. Section 1, Program Description, includes information on ineligible activities and begins on page 2. CED-funded projects can be construction or non-construction projects. For both types of projects, in the business plan, the applicant must demonstrate a clear separation of construction and non-construction activities. Each, if applicable, must include a realistic project plan with a timeline that clearly indicates that the project will be complete and all CED funding will be expended within the grant period. Applicants should also refer to the application checklist, which is presented in Section 8, for more information on what forms are required for construction and non-construction projects under this FOA. For non-construction projects, the grant period is 3 years. It is expected that non-construction projects will support participating business expansion and/or creation, and job creation be completed and CED funds expended within the 3-year project period. Applicants must demonstrate in the business plan that non-construction projects will be ready to implement at the time of the grant award through lending guidelines, sample loan agreements, commitment from identified participating businesses, and a realistic project plan. Non-construction projects involve limited construction or alteration and renovation of real property, costing $250,000 or less to support participating business creation, expansion, and/or job creation. Non-construction projects typically involve a loan or equity investment in participating businesses. Applicants proposing non-construction projects must propose to create at least a minimum number of jobs using the following formula. The total amount of federal CED funds awarded divided by $25,000 equals the minimum number of jobs to be created for non-construction projects. For example, if a grantee is awarded $800,000 in federal CED funds, it must use that money to conduct activities that will create at least 32 new, full-time, permanent jobs. We got to 32 jobs by dividing $800,000 by $25,000. For construction projects, the grant period is 5 years. It is expected that non-construction projects will support participating business expansion and/or creation and job creation be completed and CED funds expended within the 5-year project period. They must be ready to implement at the time of award. Construction projects involve construction or alteration and renovation of real property exceeding $250,000. Construction projects typically include commercial real estate for lease or use by the gamut of small and large-scale business operations. The CED program permits facility construction as needed to support participating business creation, expansion, and/or job creation. Applicants proposing construction projects must propose to create at least a minimum number of jobs using the following formula. The total amount of federal CED funds awarded divided by $30,000 equals the minimum number of jobs to be created for construction projects. For example, if a grantee is awarded $800,000 in federal CED funds, it must use that money to conduct activities that will create at least 27 new full-time permanent jobs. We got to 27 jobs by dividing $800,000 by $30,000. For the purpose of this FOA, any project with construction activities will be considered a construction project. However, prospective applicants are urged to read the federal requirements related to real property in this FOA carefully, as those apply to all projects where CED funds are used for construction activities. It is important to note that short-term construction jobs associated with preparing for participating business startup or expansion are not counted when determining the number of jobs created under the CED program, as they are designed to be temporary. For ACF property-related policy and guidance, please refer to the ACF website. Prospective applicants should also note the important post-award requirements outlined in Section 6.3, beginning on page 68. Recipients of funding under the CED program are required to submit performance progress and financial reports periodically throughout their project period. These forms include Performance Progress Report, or the PPR, which is submitted semi-annually throughout the project to report on key outcomes of the project, including businesses created and expanded, jobs created, and funds leveraged. It is submitted through the Grant Solutions Online Data Collection OLDC system. Financial reports, which are also submitted semi-annually and is how you will report expenditures and federal transactions. Additionally, it is expected that for all facility-related projects, the applicable OMB-approved SF429 forms will be submitted along with supporting documents in the Grant Solutions OLDC system. Depending on the nature of your project, you may also be required to submit one or more additional forms. More information on what forms need to be submitted and when will be provided upon receiving the award. Grantees using federal funding directly for construction, renovations, or to acquire a facility or land for the project must file a Notice of Federal Interest, also known as an NFI. After the award is granted, an OCS program specialist will work with you on calculating the federal share of real property. Per language in the Fiscal Year 2021 Consolidated Appropriations Act, in instances where the applicant proposes to loan money or have an equity investment in a third-party participating business, the applicant owns the note on the intangible property, not the real property itself. The third-party participating business is the property owner of record. Real property is defined as land, including land improvements, structures, and appurtenances, affixed equipment, thereto, but excludes movable machinery and equipment. Applicants are encouraged to read the federal requirements related to real property in this FOA very carefully as they apply to all projects where CED funds are used for construction activities. This information can be found in the FOA on page 4. For ACF property-related policy and guidance, please refer to the ACF website listed on this slide. As noted in Section 2, Federal Award Information on page 16 of the FOA, For fiscal year 2021, there is $13.6 million available to fund CED projects. The maximum award level for individual CED projects this year is $800,000. The length of each project, also known as the project period, is 36 months for non-construction related projects and 60 months for construction-related projects. OCS anticipates funding approximately 17 CED projects for fiscal year 2021. Now, we will discuss some of the general format requirements for submitting an application for a CED grant. It is very important to read Section 4.2, Content and Form of Application Submission, which begins on page 21 of the FOA, very closely. All applications must be submitted electronically using www.grants.gov. If you do not have an internet connection or the computing capacity to upload large files, then you must request and obtain an exemption to submit a paper application prior to the closing date. At the end of Section 4.2, see the section on Request an Exemption from Required Electronic Application Submission for more details on requesting an exemption. Keep in mind, there may be some differences in application formatting and submission requirements for paper applications, so pay close attention to those requirements in the FOA. For this webinar, we will focus on the requirements for electronic applications. All applications, both paper and electronic, must be double-spaced and use 12-point font in Times New Roman, except for footnotes, which may be 10-point Times New Roman. The parts of the application that may have different formatting requirements are listed on this slide and will be highlighted throughout the presentation. All applicants must submit and upload all required elements and supporting documentation in 2 files, the project description and the appendices. All submissions, inclusive of the project description and the appendices, are limited to 200 pages total. Details about the items included in the project description and appendices can be found in Section 4.2, Page Limitations and Content for All Submission Formats, which begins on page 23 of the FOA. These 2 files and page limitations do not include standard forms or OMB approved forms. An example of such a form is the SF424. These forms will be submitted separately as directed in the online system. Applications with additional files will be amended and files will be removed from the review. It is recommended that applicants use Adobe PDF to electronically combine documents instead of scanning multiple documents into one manually. We have also provided a resource on this slide which provides instructions and guidance on converting and combining files via grants.gov. In the next 2 slides, we will discuss the details of what these 2 files must include. As noted on page 23 of the FOA in Section 4.2, Page Limitations and Content for All Submission Formats, the project description file must include the items presented on this slide. All items must be labeled, numbered, and organized clearly in the table of contents. Keep in mind, this is the narrative of your application, and it may include references to supporting documentation that may be included in the appendices file. In such instances, applicants should provide clear references using item name, location, and page numbers. For example, you may include a summary of the market analysis in the project description file, but the actual market research and data may be included in the appendices file. As noted on page 23 of the FOA, in Section 4.2, Page Limitations and Content for All Submission Formats, the appendices file must include the items presented on this slide. All items must be labeled, numbered, and organized clearly in the table of contents. Keep in mind, all submissions, inclusive of the project description and appendices, which we will cover next, are limited to 200 pages total. It is extremely important for applicants to read this year's FOA very closely and submit all of the required information and forms outlined in the announcement. This information determines an applicant's eligibility for CED grant funding. If applicants fail to include all of the requested information, it will reduce or eliminate their chance of receiving a CED grant. Additionally, it is strongly encouraged that applicants review the definition of terms and utilize the checklist provided in the funding opportunity announcement to ensure all required materials have been submitted. Applicants can find the definition of terms in Section 1 of the FOA on page 6 and the checklist in Section 8, beginning on page 67. Now, we will discuss in more detail each of the components of a CED application by reviewing Section 5.1, which begins on page 52 of the FOA. The section provides a description of how reviewers will review and score applications. When putting an application together, you will want to refer to this section focusing on the evaluation criteria as well as corresponding language in Section 4.2, Content and Form of Application Submission, which begins on page 21 of the FOA. Section 4.2, Content and Form of Application Submission, page 21 of the FOA, provides detailed instructions on how to put an application together. The first part of the application should be the project summary or abstract. It should be one single-spaced page in Times New Roman 12-point font. Please place the following at the top of the abstract: project title, applicant name, address, contact phone numbers, voice, fax, cell, email address, website address, if applicable. The project summary or abstract should include a brief description of the proposed grant project, including the needs to be addressed, the proposed services, and the population groups to be served. The project description in Section 4.2, Content and Form of Application Submission, provides a summary of application requirements, and Section 5.1, Criteria, provides the information on how each criteria is evaluated and ranked in competition with other applications for available assistance. A listing of the evaluation criteria and additional bonus criteria are presented on this slide. Please remember that while you know you have a great project, how the project is described and the supporting evidence in the application package is extremely important. While we ask you to be concise, you also have to provide enough information for reviewers who know community development but who don't know your challenges and your community are provided enough details to see the success of this project in a very short time period. More will be said about the review process in later slides. We will now review the evaluation criteria. In reviewing the Need for Assistance section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application establishes a clear need for the project as outlined in the relevant subsections under Section 4.2 of the FOA. Specifically, as noted on page 52 under Section 5, Application Review Information of the FOA, in reviewing the Need for Assistance section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates that the project is needed to create or expand participating businesses and create new jobs, provide jobs in the community that individuals with low incomes can get and keep that are not being created by other organizations, and address personal and community barriers to self-sufficiency that are insufficiently addressed by other organizations or projects in the area. The application provides recently published, within the past 5 years, and relevant evidence that both the unemployment rate and the poverty rate within the project service area are equal to or greater than the state or national level. In reviewing this section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the project's goals and location are aligned with the program's intent and how the project will achieve these goals as outlined in Section 4.2. Specifically, as noted on page 53 under Section 5, Application Review Information of the FOA, in reviewing the Objectives section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates that the construction or non-construction project's goals and objectives for participant business development, job creation, and contribution to community revitalization align with community economic development efforts in the local community. The application identifies ways in which the project can help address personal and community barriers that prevent individuals with low incomes from successfully obtaining and holding jobs or creating successful businesses in the community to be served. The application demonstrates that the proposed project will meet the program's objectives by successfully serving individuals with low incomes through the creation of employment and business opportunities within the project's service area. The business plan is broken down into 5 criteria: barrier reduction support services, 5 points, project implementation, 20 points, participating business viability, 20 points, high-quality job creation, 10 points, past performance with similar job creation projects, 5 points. The total point value for this section is 60 points. The point values for each subsection under the business plan are listed on this slide. In reviewing barrier reduction support services, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates that the project will provide support services to employees to help reduce barriers to employment as outlined in Section 4.2 of the FOA. Specifically, as noted on page 53 under Section 5, Application Review Information of the FOA, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application describes the types of social support services that will be provided through the CED project for newly hired individuals with low incomes, including strategies for the retention of individuals with low incomes in the newly created positions. The application provides a plan for how the proposed support services will be provided. The application demonstrates a link between the support services that will be provided and the specific needs of the target population to be served. The application demonstrates the applicant or project partner has capacity and prior experience to successfully deliver these services. If project partners will be providing these services, the application includes signed third-party agreements describing the support services to be provided, how and when they will be provided, and the role the partner organization will play in furthering the goals of the CED project. Agreements must also be signed and dated by both the applicant and social service provider staff with signature authority. Support services may include financial literacy services, childcare services, transportation, substance use disorder treatment, English language education, and job training. Next is the project implementation section under the business plan, which is worth 20 points. In reviewing this section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates a holistic project plan that provides sufficient detail regarding how the project will be implemented as outlined in Section 4.2, Content and Form of Application Submission. Specifically, as noted beginning on page 54, under Section 5, Application Review Information of the FOA, in reviewing the project implementation section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application provides a clear and well-conceived overall approach to the project with a holistic project plan that provides an overview of the nature of the project, is consistent with the expectations described in this FOA, shows a high likelihood of success in creating and/or expanding participating businesses, which will in turn create jobs for individuals with low incomes prior to the end of the project period, and includes a quarterly timeline with specific milestones, linkages to proposed project outcomes, a discussion of how these milestones will be achieved, and an analysis of any factors that might affect the schedule and proposed strategies for dealing with them. The application includes a sound and feasible recruitment plan and strategy to obtain and document referrals of low-income individuals for employment in at least 75% of the positions created by the project. The application includes signed agreements with social service providers, for example, TANF, child support, etc., that demonstrates partnerships to obtain referrals of individuals with low incomes for employment and includes the elements outlined in Section 4.2, Content and Form of Application Submission, the project description, third-party agreements. The application describes how any confidential or sensitive information, for example, background investigations, from staff or project participants and/or project beneficiaries will be collected and protected during the course of the project, and how this information will be disposed of after the grant has ended. The application includes a plan that demonstrates the applicant's capacity to responsibly manage the proposed federal funds and to adequately protect any federal funds awarded under the application through a financial management system. For a newly established entity, an official, for example, executive director or board member authorized to make decisions on behalf of the organization, has provided a signed statement agreeing to establish a financial management system developed in accordance with 45 CFR Part 75.302 within 6 months of incorporation of the new entity, along with a signed financial statement stating that the organization is financially healthy. In reviewing participating business viability, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates the viability of the participating business to ensure a high likelihood of success, as outlined in Section 4.2 of the FOA. Specifically, as noted beginning on page 55 under Section 5, Application Review Information of the FOA, in reviewing the participating business viability section, reviewers will consider the extent to which, for each participating business, the application describes whether this is a business creation or business expansion and what the participating business will use CED funds for. The application explains the basis of projected business earnings for all of the participating businesses, including documentation demonstrating financial feasibility, Section 4.2. The application provides recent market research and/or industry data published within the past 5 years that identifies the industry's short and long-term outlook and demonstrates that the participating businesses will be viable in terms of competition, anticipated market, customer base, and market trends. The application provides evidence that the applicant and/or the participating business is in control of the site and facilities necessary for the success of the project, or that site control is conditioned only on the receipt of the grant award. The application includes a signed project partner agreement between the applicant and the participating business that includes a description of roles and the relationship between the applicant and participating business, a commitment to create new full-time, full-year positions, 75% of which will be filled by individuals with low income, a commitment to maintain and provide accurate, unduplicated counts of positions created as distinct from the number of individuals hired to fill them over the course of the grant. Additionally, reviewers will review the extent to which, for projects with equity or stock investments, reviewers will consider the extent to which draft copies of the equity stock investment agreement with all participating businesses are provided and includes the elements outlined in Section 4.2, Content and Form of Application Submission. For projects with loans, reviewers will consider the extent to which draft copies of the loan agreements with all participating businesses are provided and include the elements outlined in Section 4.2, Content and Form of Application Submission. Next is the High Quality Job Creation section, which is worth 10 points. In reviewing this section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates how applicants will work with participating businesses to create high-quality positions that will allow individuals to achieve self-sufficiency as outlined in Section 4.2 of the FOA. Specifically, as noted beginning on page 55 under Section 5, Application Review Information of the FOA, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application includes the number and types of new, permanent, full-time positions that will be created and demonstrates how they will allow families to achieve self-sufficiency by providing competitive starting wages. To demonstrate that wages will support families in achieving self-sufficiency, the application should include position title and a summary description of the duties associated with the position, identify anticipated starting wage or salary, include a projection of wage or salary growth opportunities, and summary of employee benefits that will be offered. Note, this information must be included in a table. The application demonstrates that participating businesses will create full-time, full-year positions, 75% of which will be filled by individuals with low incomes. The application describes and provides evidence of the leave policies for all participating businesses and demonstrates that paid leave is provided to those who fill the positions created by the participating businesses. The application includes detailed descriptions and evidence of the benefits that will be provided to employees of the participating businesses. Such benefits could include health insurance, retirement benefits, transit benefits, childcare, and other fringe benefits. The application describes and provides evidence of how individuals with low incomes will be supported in achieving career growth and advancement, including any training, educational, or certification opportunities employees will be provided by participating businesses or other project partners. The application describes and provides evidence of the scheduling policies for all participating businesses and demonstrates that the participating business will provide sufficient, stable, and predictable working hours and/or flexibility needed to care for family members, pursue training or educational opportunities, and address other personal matters. The application shows that positions will be created during the project period and sustained for at least 1 year after the end of the grant period, as outlined in Section 4.2, Content and Form of Application Submission. In reviewing the past performance with similar job creation project section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates that the applicant has past experience with similar projects as outlined in Section 4.2 of the FOA. Specifically, as noted beginning on page 56 under Section 5, Application Review Information of the FOA, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates that the applicant and all partner organizations have the experience necessary to successfully carry out the proposed project, including evidence of 2 business creation or business expansion projects undertaken by the applicant that have been executed within the past 10 years, are similar in terms of scope or scale to the project for which CED funding is being requested, and were successful in creating sustainable, full-time, full-year positions. The application provides a quantitative and qualitative description of the jobs created through past business creation or expansion projects. This should include descriptions of the positions created, including information on wages and benefits, descriptions of how the jobs allowed persons to leave public assistance programs or similar supports, and information on the long-term sustainability of the positions created. Next, we have the organizational capacity section, which is worth 10 points. In reviewing this section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates that the organization, staff, and project partners have sufficient overall experience to carry out the project as outlined in relevant subsections under Section 4.2 of the FOA. Specifically, as noted on page 57 under Section 5, Application Review Information of the FOA, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates that the organization, its staff, and its project partners have sufficient overall experience to successfully implement the proposed project, including relevant experience and success in developing and operating businesses similar to those to be conducted under the proposed project. If one or more project partners are involved, the application demonstrates that the combined capacity of the applicant and the partner organizations is sufficient to successfully implement the proposed project. The application includes a signed project partner agreement with all project partners involved as outlined in Section 4.2, Content and Form of Application Submission. The application includes a resolution, meeting minutes, or other documentation demonstrating that the Board of Directors has granted approval for the proposed project. The application identifies staff that will be responsible for maintaining oversight of each program activity, staff, and partner, and describes procedures and policies used to oversee staff and/or partners or contractors. For applicants that cannot demonstrate substantial experience with economic development projects similar to those proposed in the application, the extent to which the application provides evidence of a viable partnership with a more experienced partner, including evidence of a strategy for the more experienced partner, as defined in Section 1, Program Description, to provide the administrative, technical, and/or financial technical assistance needed to ensure the success of the project. The application includes signed agreements as outlined in Section 4.2, Content and Form of Application Submission, the project description, third-party agreements. Additionally, reviewers will review the extent to which the application demonstrates through biographical sketches, degree information, resumes, and descriptions of previous experience that the identified staff are qualified to carry out the proposed project. The application demonstrates that key staff have the appropriate time commitment available and experience in supervision, finance and business development and management, and working with the target population. The discussion of staff experience must include sufficient detail on whether the individual's skills and experience demonstrate an ability to fulfill the tasks assigned to them. The application states clearly whether all key project staff positions are filled, including positions to be hired by third parties. In cases where a key staff person has not yet been hired, the application demonstrates that an appropriate position description, recruitment strategy, and estimated hiring timeline have been developed. Letters of support is the next criterion. In reviewing this section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates sufficient public support to successfully carry out the project as outlined in the relevant subsection under Section 4.2 of the FOA. The application includes letters of support from local or regional government agencies or community organizations that describe the specific relationship the supporter has to the applicant, knowledge of the applicant's experience and qualifications in business and job creation, and any in-kind or financial contributions to the project, if applicable. All submissions must be included in the application package. At minimum, each letter of support must identify the individual writing the letter, the organization they represent, the date, and the reasons for supporting the project. In reviewing the project budget and budget justification, which is worth 20 points, reviewers will consider the extent to which the budget for the project demonstrates that the applicant has sufficient funds available and that the planned expenditures are necessary, appropriate, and reasonable for the success of the project as outlined in the relevant subsections under Section 4.2 of the FOA. Please note that applicants must forecast their cash needs over the project period on the Federal Assistance Form, SF 424A, Sections D and E. As noted on page 58 under Section 5, Application Review Information of the FOA, reviewers will specifically consider the extent to which the application demonstrates that the amount of funds available for the project, CED and non-CED, is commensurate with the level of effort necessary to accomplish the activities, goals, and objectives of the project. The application demonstrates that the financial estimates demonstrate the necessity, reasonableness, and allocation of the proposed costs to carry out the activities proposed in the application. The application demonstrates that the budget includes funds for all required items, including travel for one staff member to attend a training and technical assistance conference in Washington, D.C. during each year of the grant. The application includes a budget and budget justification that clearly links the proposed expenditures to the proposed activities necessary for accomplishing the project. The application's budget narrative demonstrates in sufficient detail for a reviewer to evaluate the appropriateness and reasonableness of the line items proposed, that the proposed budget is appropriate for accomplishing the proposed project. In reviewing the project budget and budget justification section, reviewers will also consider the extent to which the application provides sources and uses of funds documentation for both CED and non-CED funding sources, if applicable, necessary to implement the project, along with an itemization of expenses by funding source. The application budget demonstrates program income is not necessary to meet the funding needs for implementation of the project design. The application demonstrates that the CED cost per position created is equal to or less than the ratio found by dividing the request award amount by $30,000 for construction projects or $25,000 for non-construction projects. For projects that involve non-CED funding to carry out the project, reviewers will also consider the extent to which the application provides evidence that all capital requirements have been met through financing, cash resources, or in-kind contributions. The application demonstrates evidence, for example, signed commitment letters, of unconditional commitments for loans, municipal, federal, or state tax credits, equity stock investments, or other supporting grants totaling at least the amount of non-CED funds necessary. The application provides evidence, for example, a financial statement of cash available, of the applicant's ability to contribute any non-CED cash resources that are needed for the project, and that the applicant has pledged in support of the project. The application provides evidence of in-kind contributions of personal property and a demonstration of how the value of those contributions was established through techniques such as an inventory valuation for equipment and/or a certified appraisal for real property. For projects with only CED funding, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates the applicant's ability to carry out a successful project and accomplish its goals with only CED funds. For construction projects, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application demonstrates that financial plans include all construction costs and that all costs are appropriately justified as reasonable and necessary to carry out the activities proposed in the application. To evaluate the project integration criterion, which is worth 5 points, reviewers will consider the extent to which all of the application criteria elements are aligned. For example, this section would determine how effectively the need for assistance, objectives, business plan, and project budget and budget justification all fit together. This criterion does not measure any element of the application in isolation. It is used to assess how well all components of the application relate to each other to form a cohesive, carefully planned project. As noted beginning on page 59, under Section 5, Application Review Information of the FOA, to evaluate this section, reviewers will consider the extent to which there are no significant incongruences between any sections of the application that would need to be resolved prior to effective project implementation, The completion of the project will effectively lead to creation or expansion of businesses and result in the creation of the jobs proposed in the application. The applicant demonstrated that creation and/or expansion of the participating businesses and the creation of these jobs will address the issues and barriers identified in the need for assistance and objectives criteria. The applicant clearly described a logical approach with a realistic time frame and identified the resources necessary to achieve the project goals proposed in the application. The budget expenditures closely correlate with the objectives and activities proposed in the business plan. The last elements we will discuss are the 6 opportunities for bonus points. The bonus points vary by opportunity. Opportunities worth 3 bonus points include CED projects serving coal, oil, and gas, and/or power plant communities, CED projects focusing on healthcare industry or manufacturing health supplies, projects located in a county with persistent poverty. Opportunities worth 2 bonus points include CED project located in rural communities with high rates of poverty, unemployment, and substance use disorder, alignment with the Promised Zones Initiative, states and trust territories without active CED grants. More information on how reviewers will evaluate bonus points can be found under Section 5, Application Review Information of the FOA, beginning on page 60. Now we will discuss the process for submitting your CED application. More information on the process is found in Section 4, Application and Submission Information, beginning on page 20 of the FOA. All applications must be received by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on July 12, 2021. Applications submitted after this deadline will not be reviewed. In addition, all organizations must have a valid Data Universal Number System, or DUNS number, and you must update your registration with the System for Award Management, or SAM, formerly the Central Contract Registry, annually. Applicants, both new and existing, are strongly encouraged to review this information well in advance of the application deadline, as we will not be able to extend the deadline and you will not be able to apply without a valid DUNS number. Applications are required to be submitted electronically at www.grants.gov. Applicants submitting applications electronically do not need to provide additional copies of their application materials. Electronically submitted applications will be considered late and disqualified if the date or timestamp is after 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on July 12, 2021. Detailed instructions on submitting applications electronically are available on the grants.gov website. All applicants must complete 3 registrations in order to submit a grant application: DUNS number registration, SAM.gov registration, and grants.gov registration. Please note that the registration process for grants.gov can take up to 10 days, so all applicants, both new and existing, are strongly encouraged to review this information well in advance of the application deadline. Applications submitted by an authorized organizational representative, or AOR, that do not have a current registration with the System for Award Management, SAM, will be rejected by grants.gov. For detailed guidance on how to register and update registration information for all 3 systems, please visit the Register and Get Ready resource available on the ACF website at the URL listed on this slide. If you encounter any trouble submitting your application, you must obtain a ticket number directly from the grants.gov help desk. A ticket number is required for all waiver requests. ACF may extend an application due date and receipt time when circumstances such as natural disasters occur, such as floods, hurricanes, etc., when there are widespread disruptions of mail service, or in other rare cases. The determination to extend or waive due date and receipt time requirements rests with ACF's Chief Grants Management Officer. Applicants are required to submit applications electronically unless they have received an exemption in writing from the ACF Grants Officer. Details about how to obtain waivers are described in the announcement under Section 4.2. If a waiver is granted, hard copy applications are due 4:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Refer to the announcement for the address to submit application. Again, more information on the process is found in Section 4, Application and Submission Information, beginning on page 21 of the FOA. Now we will discuss the details of the application review process. The FOA discusses the application review process in Section 5.2, Review and Selection Process, which begins on page 62. Every application received from a qualified CDC will be reviewed if it is submitted on time and is not over the maximum funding level of $800,000. No more than 2 files will be provided to the panel to read and review. Once an application passes the initial screening, it will be reviewed and scored based on its responsiveness to the evaluation criteria in Section 5 of the Funding Opportunity Announcement. It will be reviewed and scored by a panel composed of non-federal community economic development professionals and other social service professionals. The application will be reviewed for content completeness. Therefore, a very important aspect of the application is the inclusion of all documentation needed to support written statements. The easiest way to make certain your organization is covering all of the bases is by submitting all of the elements in the application checklist presented in Section 8, Other Information, of the Funding Opportunity Announcement. Again, more detail on the application review process can be found in the FOA in Section 5.2, Review and Selection Process, which begins on page 62. Highly ranked applications are not guaranteed funding. Reviewers' scores weigh heavily in funding decisions, but are not the only factor considered. There are several other important factors also taken into consideration. The FOA includes several factors ACF and OCS will consider when making awards. The OCS director has discretion to make all final funding decisions. Again, the FOA discusses the application review process in full detail in Section 5.2, Review and Selection Process, which begins on page 62. All applicants who are funded will be notified by email no later than September 29, 2021 from Grant Solutions. Grant Solutions is a comprehensive grants management system provided by the Grants Center of Excellence. Applicants who are not awarded a grant will receive an email from the OCS Operations Center with a copy of the panel's comments about the strengths and weaknesses of their applications. While your project may have been very good, OCS only has funding to award grants to a small percentage of applicants. More on the award process can be found in Section 6, Federal Award Administration Information of the FOA, which begins on page 64. Page 66 of the FOA includes several reference websites that may be of use in putting together an application. These websites are also listed on this slide. This concludes our webinar on the 2021 CED Funding Opportunity Announcement.